to the first official meeting of the Feather Friends.
The large face, your greatest fear.
Hey, I'm mooning you. Let's move.
What do these clips have in common? Exactly. They show a relation to cultist activities, more specifically, a build of traditions, and eventually, a boredom of being in a cult, especially the Tentacle Acres clip I just showed. But something they all have in common, the one thing that makes this theory. And yes, the title was not lying. This is the SpongeBob Moon Cult Theory.
Liftoff will start in T-minus 10 seconds. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Now it's time!
We have ignition.
Don't ask about the Goku stuff in the edit, I thought it would look cool. Anyway, to start off this theory, I want to talk about the constant links to the moon and space. Remember this clip? It's super important.
Oh, Spatula, now that we're together again, nothing will ever separate us.
One monster Krabby Patty.
Suspiciously, the animators of SpongeBob continue to shove space stuff into random areas of the show. And for some reason, it always has to do with SpongeBob. Look at where SpongeBob is. Now, maybe this is a metaphor to represent that he is so happy that he is metaphorically in space, but I think the symbolism represents something else. And an episode that shows this is Sandy's Nightmare. Now, most of this episode is kinda useless, but it's until the part where this guy who calls himself the shaman starts to tell a story.
Long ago, before fish walked the seas, there lived in the sky one sun, one star, and one moon.
What the?
Well, the point of the story is that the star was tired and wanted to sleep, so made copies of himself to play with his, well, friends, I guess. But why do we see Patrick as the star, and SpongeBob as the sun, and Squidward as the moon? Why? Actually, it's pretty common to see the planet suddenly come alive. Think of it. The Best Day Ever, the SpongeBob SquarePants movie, Goons on the Moon. Wait. This episode is a bit different from the rest and might be the one episode that actually might convince you or at least lead you to believe this theory. So let's look at the episode Goons on the Moon. SpongeBob orders a Krabby Patty. However, as soon as Squidward comes to deliver it, the rocket is launched and they all get sent to the moon. Common SpongeBob episode, right? No. The end of the episode is where everything begins to seem off. The moon is destroyed by SpongeBob, and when all hope is lost, SpongeBob suggests an idea to Santa. Now, Santa being here is also very weird, but it's very important, so keep that in mind. SpongeBob grabs a bunch of water guns and blows himself into a big, giant moon. Now, already this is insane. However, silly question. What do you think would happen if the moon suddenly grew 4 times its original size and turned into a sponge full of water? No, it wouldn't crash into the earth. I've already checked. SpongeBob's velocity is still the same. Instead, it would cause cataclysmic events to happen on the earth, like mass droughts and city-sized floods, meters flying and crashing into random areas of the earth because of the stronger gravitational pull of the moon. However, can a sponge orbiting the earth, which is 4 times the size of the moon, really cause that much damage? Well, the mass of the moon is 7.35 times 10 to the power of 22 kg. So if SpongeBob surpassed this mass, then we can deduce that the earth is screwed. Now, a sea sponge's mass is about 66.8 grams, but remember that SpongeBob is swollen up with water, so factoring in the mass of the moon and timesing it by an estimate of 4 will give us a number of 8.8 times 10 to the power of 22 to 1.14 times 10 to the 23 kg. This is very complicated. I'd rather not spend boring you with the amount of damn research I had to go through. However, Why is this information even important? Well, it's because we now know that this episode never happened. More precisely, it was a story told by the cult, a prophecy, if you will, because it's impossible for the moon to become 4 times bigger and act the same as a normal moon, as we saw the aftermath of SpongeBob becoming the moon, going back to normal. Oh, yeah, and Santa Claus appears out of nowhere after Squidward waked him up, and we all know Santa Claus lives on the North Pole, not on the dark side of the moon, which kind of reinforces that this is made up.
The groundhog just for a creeped out from a home is made in.
So, we have discussed that this code that's invading the Bikini Bottom has told a story through the episode Goons on the Moon. However, we know this isn't an episode and just a prophecy made by the code. But who is in this code? I told you this is important for later. It seems like this code is really obsessed with planets coming to life. My question, who is in this group? Well, the entire Bikini Bottom is. After 25 years of SpongeBob, you think we'd see something. Look at the amount of cults in the Bikini Bottom, who we only see in one episode and then never again. Tentacle Acres, the Goofy Goobers, yes than that, the Cephalopod Lodge. Wait, this cult here might be the key to proving our theory. My point is that the whole Bikini Bottom has joined through multiple cults, all worshipping basically the same thing, with some key differences. The Cephalopod Lodge worship the eye, and I want to focus on this all-seeing eye. If you didn't know, most people associate eyes with the Illuminati. However, it is different. This is the all-seeing eye, which watches from space. So now we know that these cults worship an eye and tell stories and prophecies about the planets being living, breathing beings capable of feel. However, what does the eel mean? If you don't know what I mean, the Cephalopod Lodge fear the eel. Well, I researched, and most eels in all mythologies and cults are represented as tricksters and backstabbers, the worst bit of humanity, like the snake. And the reason they electrocute you is to take away your sin. I mean, look at what Squidward says.
I'll never forget my initiation ceremony.
Bet you do remember, Squidward.
The groundhog just for a creeped out from a home is made in.
Now comes my favorite part to this theory, the Feather Friends. If you don't know who the Feather Friends are, coincidentally or not, we're about to find out. They show up in the same episode as the Cephalopod Lodge. This group is created to help Squidward get over being kicked out of the Cephalopod Lodge cult, which I also point out for later. Listen to what Squidward says after he is kicked out.
The last thing in my life I really enjoyed. And SpongeBob ruined it too.
At least you still have the hat.
Yeah, I do, don't I?
He's treating it as if this cult was something super special to him, like he had more of a relationship with it instead of it just being a nice getaway club. However, we'll come back to this. This cult SpongeBob and Patrick made is supposed to mirror the Cephalopod Lodge as well, and they have a spiritual connection with the eye. Also, their ceremony is to be stung by a jellyfish. Well, this would be fine, but one thing SpongeBob says catches me off guard.
Right? These aren't my cephalopod robes.
They sure aren't. They're your uniform for your new lodge. Welcome to the first official meeting of the Feather Friends.
Feather friends.
Somebody already had feather buddies.
Yeah, those feather buddies better hope they don't run into us in a dark alley.
Who are the Feather Buddies and why do they feel the need to trademark their name from being used? Well, let's go out of SpongeBob. In fact, let's look at the real world codes and compare. And a code that bears a large resemblance to all these codes is Heaven's Gate. Let me explain their beliefs quickly. A small summary is that the members of the code believed they were leaving their bodies behind in a chrysalis that would take them to an evolutionary level above human. So like aliens, I guess. Which this theory isn't about aliens. A good idea for a theory though. I see you, Mr. Gorilla. However, what we can get from the cult is the mass suicides that happen. In fact, a lot of cults share the same idea as Heaven's Gate and then commit suicide in order to become part of an alien society, being turned into beings above humans, or simply because they follow their cult so much that they just committed suicide because they were told to, without even questioning them. More cults that follow this trend is the Jonestown cult that were unknowingly committing suicide after drinking a poisoned purple Kool-Aid. Again, because of the idea after death they would be turned into greater beings / aliens. So what if, just maybe, the Feather Friends and all the other cults in the Bikini Bottom believe the same thing? I mean, we have already seen the stories of living planets and beings out of our comprehension being told to us through the show. So, how are these cults any different to the ones we mentioned?
The roundhouse just for us, then creeped out from a home is made in.
So, to recap on what we've discussed so far, SpongeBob and Patrick, along with the entire Bikini Bottom, have started up cults with basically the same idea, and that is after death they will become planets and higher beings, controlled by the all-seeing eye. But what if I were to mention that this all-seeing eye is someone we have actually seen before, and he suspiciously is wearing the same uniform as the Cephalopod Lodge members? Yes, big reveal, it's Bubbles. Bubbles controls and looks after the planets in our solar system. However, SpongeBob and Plankton destroys the planets and are almost evaporated. Surprisingly, we don't see these two planets ever again. Weird. It's almost like SpongeBob has continuity. Anyways, Bubbles being the all-seeing eye is perfect for our theory. And this is because it means we know these cults have such a big dilemma with the all-seeing eye. Now, we know that SpongeBob episodes aren't in order. I mean, the timeline of SpongeBob sucks to work with. However, SpongeBob saw Bubbles in the SpongeBob movie and then never again. It's almost like he disappeared. Well, no. SpongeBob and Plankton travel to the past when they first met Bubbles, which means this is Bubbles but from the past. The present Bubbles is probably really old because that version of Bubbles isn't the one SpongeBob and Plankton met. This means that the SpongeBob we are seeing in this episode is probably the SpongeBob that came before the Cephalopod Lodge and the rest of the cult, which also means that he told and spread rumors of this magical dolphin. Knowing SpongeBob, he probably described it very badly, which is why the cults of the Bikini Bottom all have different views and ideas to who this all-seeing eye is. This also explains the constant space imagery being shoved into wherever the creators can put it. And sadly, in the end, just like Heaven's Gate, just like the Jonestown cult, everyone will die. All because the Feather Friends were retards in a chicken suit. I hope you enjoy that theory. These videos are hopefully getting better in quality. If you do enjoy a video by me, then please leave a like, subscribe to be hunky. Oh yeah, and shoutouts for today are at SmellyHam and at Green7916. Thanks for your comment, and if you want to be a winner like these guys, then please be sure to leave a comment just like them. Hope you enjoyed the video and goodbye.